Preface. This book is not the work of a dreamer. Neither has it proceeded from a love of learned paradox, nor yet is it a cunningly devised fable aimed at particular tendencies in current science, philosophy, or religion. It is a thoroughly serious and sincere attempt to present what is, to the author's mind, the true and final solution of one of the greatest and most fascinating of all problems connected with the history of mankind. That this true solution has not been furnished before is not strange. The suggestion that primitive Eden was at the Arctic pole seems at first sight the most incredible of all wild and willful paradoxes. And it is only within the lifetime of our own generation that the progress of geological discovery has relieved the hypothesis of fatal and antecedent improbability. Moreover, when one considers the enormous variety and breadth of the fields from which its evidences of truth must be derived, when one remembers how recent are those comparative sciences on whose results the argument must chiefly depend, when one observes that many of the most striking of our alleged proofs, both in the physical and in the anthropological domain, are precisely the latest of the conclusions of these modern of all sciences. It is easy to see that a generation ago, the demonstration here attempted could not have been given. Even 5 years ago, some of the most interesting and cogent of our arguments would as yet have been lacking. The interest which has so long invested our problem, and which has prompted so many attempts to solve it, was never greater than today. The lapse of centuries has rendered many other questions antiquated, but not this. On the contrary, the more the modern world has advanced in new knowledge, the more exigent has grown the necessity of finding a valid solution. Men are feeling as if never before that until the starting point of human history can be determined, the historian, the archaeologists, and the paleontological anthropologists are all working in the dark. It is seen that without this desideratum, the ethnologist, the philologist, the mythographer, the theologian, the sociologist, can none of them construct anything not liable to profound modification, if not to utter overthrow, the moment any new light shall be thrown upon the mother region and the prehistoric movements of the human race. Every anthropological science, therefore, and every science related to anthropology, seems at the present moment to be standing in a state of dubitant expectancy, willing to work a little tentatively, but conscious of, there we go, it's not so fast, its destitution of the needful primal datum, and conscious of its consequent lack of a valid structural law. To the believer in revelation, or even in the most ancient and venerable ethnic traditions, the volume here presented will be found to possess uncommon interest. For many years the public mind has been schooled in a narrow naturalism which has in its worldview a little room for the extraordinary as it has for the supernatural. Decade after decade, the representatives of this teaching have been measuring the natural phenomena of every age and every place by the petty measuring rod of their own local and temporary experience. So long and so successfully have they dogmatized on the constancy of nature's laws and the uniformity of nature's forces, that of late it has required no small degree of courage to enable an intelligent man to stand up in the face of his generation and avow his personal faith in the early existence of man of gigantic stature and of almost millenarian longevity. Especially have clergymen and Christian teachers and writers upon biblical history been embarrassed by the popular incredulity on these subjects, and not infrequently by a consciousness that this incredulity was in some measure shared by themselves. To all such, and indeed to all the broader minded among the naturalists themselves, a new philosophy of primeval history, a philosophy which for all the alleged extraordinary effects provides the adequate extraordinary causes, cannot fail to prove most welcome. The execution of the plan of the book is by no means all that the author could desire. To the elaboration of so vast an argument, the materials for which must be gleaned from every possible field of knowledge, the broadest and profoundest scholar might well devote the undistracted labor of a lifetime. To the writer, loaded with the cares of laborious executive office, there were lacking both the leisure and the equipment otherwise attainable for so high a task. The best he could do was turn on for 2 summer vacations into work time and give the result to the world. Of the correctness of his position he has no doubt, and of the preparedness of the scientific world to accept it he is also confident. To the foregoing remarks it may be proper to add that apart from its immediate purpose the book has interest and, it is hoped, value as a contribution to the infant science of comparative mythology. By the application of the author's true key to ancient cosmology and mythical geography, it has been possible to adjust and interpret a great variety of ancient cosmological and geographical notions never before understood by modern scholars. For example, the origin of significance of the Chinvat Bridge are here for the first time explained. The indication of the polocentric character common to the mythical systems of sacred geography among all ancient peoples will probably be new to every reader. The new light thrown upon such questions as those relating to the direction of the sacred quarter, the location of the abode of the dead, the character and position of the cosmical tree, the course of the backward flowing ocean river, the correlation of the navels of earth and heaven, not to enumerate other points, can hardly fail to attract the lively attention of all students and teachers of ancient mythology and mythical geography. To teachers of Homer, the fresh contributions toward a right understanding of Homeric cosmology are sure to prove of value, and if, in the end, the work may only lead to a systematic and intelligent teaching of the long neglected but most important science of ancient cosmology and mythical geography in all reputable universities and classical schools, it will surely not have been written in vain. That the author has escaped all errors and oversights while ranging through so numerous and such diverse fields of investigation, many of which are just opened to the pioneering specialist, is too much to expect. He only asks that any such blemishes which a more competent scholarship may detect, or which the progress of new learning may yet bring to light, may not be allowed to prejudice the force of true arguments, but many be pointed out in the spirit of a candid and helpful criticism. In conclusion, the author respectfully commits his work to all truth-seeking spirits, not less to the patient investigators of nature than to the students of history, of literature, and of religion. Particularly would he commend it to all those yearning and waiting Königssöhnen, whose experience has been described by Hans Andersen in the words: Es war einmal ein Königssohn. Niemand hatte so viele und schöne Bücher wie er. Alles, was in dieser Welt geschehen, konnte er darin lesen und die Abbildungen in prächtigen Kupferstichen erblicken. Von jedem Volk und jedem Lande konnte er Auskunft erhalten. Aber wo der Garten des Paradieses zu finden sei, davon stand kein Wort darin. Und gerade der war es, an den er am meisten dachte. The same being interpreted read as follows. Once upon a time there was a king's son. Nobody had so many and such beautiful books as he. In these all that had ever happened in the world he could read and see depicted in splendid engravings. Of every people and of every land could he get information, but as to where the Garden of Eden was, not a word was to be found therein. And this, just this it was on which he meditated most of all.
What is this place? Where am I?
You were drawn here by forces so powerful that they stretch between the worlds.
What is it?
You must tell no one that you journeyed through the gateway.
Who are you?
Jason.
I'm sorry, I'm forgetting my manners. I'm Pythagoras.
Whoever heard of a hero called Jason? Now Hercules, that's a name to father a legend.
You dare to defy your king?
Have you no respect for the gods?
Who was that young man? He's of no consequence.
I don't understand my place in this world.
You're not like other men. You'll realize that soon enough.
This is just the beginning. You have a great destiny.
The discovery of America by Christopher Columbus in 1492 is perhaps one of history's most widely promulgated and disingenuous fallacies. Not only is it now generally acknowledged that Norse Vikings discovered the continent nearly 1,000 years before Columbus, but there also exists strong evidence indicating that certain ancient civilizations, such as the Egyptians and Phoenicians, had also visited America in the distant pre-Columbian past.
Thus far, then, all search has been fruitless. Paradise is indeed lost. The explorer cannot find it. The theologian, naturalists, and the archaeologists have all sought it in vain. Representative voices out of every camp are heard, confessing utter ignorance as to the region where human history began. The problem, says Professor Ebers, remains unanswered. From the foregoing chapters, it would seem as if nearly every imaginable site of the John Eden of Genesis had been proposed, examined, and found unavailable. One, however, remains: a region of rarest interest in astronomical, physical, and historical geography, the natural center of the only historic hemisphere. Considering the fascination of the subject and the inexhaustible ingenuity that has been expended on it, it seems remarkable that it should be left to the closing years of the 19th century to bring forward and seriously to test the proposition that the cradle of the human race, the Eden of primitive tradition, was situated at the North Pole, in a country submerged at the time of the deluge. Chapter 2. It is evident, on a moment's thought, that our hypothesis immediately and materially modifies the whole problem of the location of paradise. Given a prehistoric circumpolar continent at the North Pole as a cradle of the race, what must have been marked and memorable features of that primitive abode? To the first man, there would have been but one day and one night in a year. The stars, instead of seeming to rise and set, would have had an apparently horizontal motion round and round the observer from left to right. The pole, the unmoving center point of the heavens directly overhead, would naturally have seemed to be the top of the world, the true heaven, the changeless seat of the supreme all-ruling God. And if, accordingly, through all the long lifetime of the antediluvian world, the circumpolar sky was to human thought the true abode of God, the oldest post-diluvian peoples, through those scattered down at the sides of the globe, half or 2/3 the distance to the equator, could not easily have forgotten that at the center and true top of the rotating sky was the throne of its greater creator, and that there, in the far north, was the sacred quarter of the world.
Sumeru Mountain. That's what they called Mount Meru or Mount Sumeru at the North Pole. Supposedly there's a magnetic mountain called Mount Sumeru, and it's at the center of the world, the North Pole. Here at the ancient city in Thailand. This is like a recreation, apparently. According to Thai cosmology, Sumeru Mountain is considered the pillar of the world as well as the center of the universe.
That all writers upon Greek mythology, including even the latest, should proceed upon the same assumptions as the professed Homeric interpreters and geographers, building upon their foundations, is only natural. And that the current conceptions of the cosmology of the ancient Greeks should profoundly affect current interpretations of the cosmological and geographical data of other ancient peoples is also precisely what the history and inner relationships of modern ideological studies would lead one to expect. It is not surprising, therefore, that the earth of the ancient Hebrews, Egyptians, Indo-Aryans, and other ancient peoples has been assumed to correspond to the supposed flat earth of the Greeks. Okay. This is the confusing part. The writer believes that the earth is a sphere. He tries to fit both worldviews. Keep that in mind when reading these texts. A protracted study of the subject has convinced the present writer that this modern assumption as to the form of the Homeric earth is entirely baseless and misleading. He has furthermore satisfied himself that the Egyptians, Akkadians, Assyrians, Babylonians, Phoenicians, Hebrews, Greeks, Iranians, Indo-Aryans, Chinese, Japanese, in fine all the most ancient historic peoples, possessed in their earliest traceable periods a cosmology essentially identical and one of a far more advanced type than has been attributed to them. The purpose of this chapter is to set forth and illustrate this oldest known conception of the universe and of its parts. In ancient thought, the grand divisions of the world are four, to wit, the abode of the gods, the abode of the living man, the abode of the dead, and finally the abode of the demons. To locate these in right mutual relations, one must begin by representing to himself the earth as a sphere or spheroid, and as situated within a concentric with the starry sphere, each having its axis perpendicular and its north pole at the top. The pole star is thus in the true zenith, and the heavenly heights centering about it are the abode of the supreme god or gods. According to the same conception, the upper or northern hemisphere of the earth is the proper home of the living man, the under or southern hemisphere of the earth the abode of disembodied spirits and rulers of the dead, and finally the undermost region of all, that centering around the southern pole, is of the heavens the lowest hell. The two hemispheres of the earth were furthermore conceived of as separated from each other by an equatorial ocean or oceanic current.
The plumed serpent deities of the Maya, Aztec, and Inca, known as Kukulkan, Quetzalcoatl, Viracocha, and Amaru, were often portrayed in human form and in stark contrast with their native subjects, having the appearance of tall, white-skinned men with golden beards and hair, and blue or green eyes. These mysterious god-men were said to have come from over the sea, bearing with them secret knowledge from the land of the gods, a highly advanced pagan civilization that worshipped the sun until it was destroyed in a great flood. Each of the civilizations that the plumed serpents allegedly founded in the Americas, namely the Maya, Aztec, and Inca, were indeed in possession of peculiar knowledge they could not have attained on their own, such as incredibly accurate cosmological models and projections, impossible for human beings of the time to ascertain.
Antediluvian. The antediluvian period, its meaning is before the deluge. The deluge was the water flood, referred to in the Bible between the fall of man and the deluge, the flood in the biblical cosmology. The antediluvian period begins with the creation according to Genesis and ends with the destruction of all life on earth except those saved with Noah in the ark. According to the Bible speaks of this era as being the time of great wickedness. There were Gibberim, giants in the earth in those days, as well as Nephilim. Some translations identify the two as one and the same. The Gibberim were unusually powerful. Genesis calls them mighty men, which were of old, men of renown. The antediluvian period ended when God sent a flood to wipe out all life except Noah, his family, and the animals they took with them. Nevertheless, the Nephilim, literally meaning fallen ones, from the Hebrew root, the fallen ones, reappear much later in the Bible narrative. Plato's story of lost Atlantis, the island which the ocean god Poseidon prepared for his son Atlas to rule over, is a fascinating picture of the antediluvian world. Whether originating in Egypt, as claimed by Plato, or inherited as a part of the legendary wealth of the Hellenes, it is of special interest to us in the present discussion, and this for 3 reasons. First, we have elsewhere shown that in the oldest Greek thought, Atlas belongs to the North Pole, and it is only reasonable to locate the kingdom of Atlas in the same locality. Secondly, some authorities have unconsciously placed Atlantis in just this polar position by identifying its inhabitants with the Hyperboreans. Thirdly, Apollodorus and Theopompus expressly call the lost land Meropia, and its inhabitants Merops, according to the above authorities issued from Meru. The fabled country further resembles Eden in the difficulties which scholarship of every kind has found in giving it a location in harmony with all the data. These difficulties are so great that some learned writers have located it as far to the west as America, others as far to the east as in the Sea of Azov or in Persia. Even of those who have sought a place for it in the mid-Atlantic, some have pushed it up and some down, until one of the latest writers says, all hypotheses are permissible.
Could it be that Kukulkan, Quetzalcoatl, Viracocha, and Amaru were survivors of an antediluvian race whose land was destroyed in the great flood of Noah? Could it be that these mysterious plumed serpent deities were in fact exiles from the lost city of Atlantis? The story of the rise and fall of both the city of Atlantis and the great Atlantean Empire has been passed down in one form or another through the oral traditions of many diverse cultures all over the globe. Though the names and details may differ from one people group to another, the common thread of a technologically advanced antediluvian civilization that was destroyed in a great flood can be traced through nearly all of them. What we have in the story of Atlantis is at the very least an allegory of the antediluvian world order, the old world order, in which the fallen angels distributed the whole earth into portions among themselves, and became each the god of his own realm, appointing his giant hybrid sons as divine kings. The allegorical nature of the story of Atlantis can be further discerned in the following remarks by late Masonic philosopher Manly P. Hall. The Critias first describes the blessed state of the Atlantean people under the benevolent rulership of 10 kings who were bound together in a league. These kings were monarchs over 7 islands. 10 kings bound together in a league is the subject of biblical prophecy concerning a final world empire that will arise before the end of the age. 7 and 10 are both numbers signifying the domain and authority of the dragon and his beast in the book of Revelation. And another sign appeared in heaven. Behold, a great fiery red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 diadems on his heads. I will tell you the mystery of the woman and of the beast that carries her, which has the 7 heads and the 10 horns. The 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings who have received no kingdom as yet, but they receive authority for 1 hour as kings with the beast.
"70,000 years ago, the Ancient Ones turned our tribes against one another. The dragons became our greatest allies and our fiercest enemies. Now you must battle to ensure our survival. Raise a mighty dragon. Forge powerful alliances. Build your empire. Wage war and dominate. Enter the myth. Explore the mystery. Live the fantasy. Dragons of Atlantis. Survive extinction.
Terra incognita is the term was reintroduced in the 15th century, and some English maps may show parts unknown. Terra incognita is parts unknown. The urban legend claims that cartographers label such regions with "here by dragons," although cartographers did claim that fantastic beasts, including large serpents, existed in remote corners of the world and depicted such as decoration on their maps. Only one known surviving map, the Lenox Globe, in the collection of the New York Public Library, actually says "here be dragons." Alternatively, Terra incognita may also refer to the hypothesized continent Terra Australis incognita, the unknown land of the south, as seen in the Theatrum Orbis Terrarum. During the 19th century, Terra incognita disappeared from the maps, since both the coastlines and the inner parts of the continents had been fully explored. Terra Australis was a hypothetical continent first posited in antiquity and which appeared on maps between the 15th and 18th centuries. Although the landmass was drawn onto maps, Terra Australis was not based on any actual surveying of such a landmass, but rather based on the hypothesis that continents in the northern hemisphere should be balanced by land in the south. This theory of balancing land has been documented as soon as the 5th century on maps by Macrobius, who used the term Australis on his maps. In early 1800s, a British explorer had popularized the naming of Australia after Terra Australis, giving the rationale that there was no probability of finding any significant landmass anywhere more south than Australia. Yeah, there you have it, when you make a sphere of the Earth. Okay, the continent that would come to be named Antarctica would be explored decades after Flinders' book on Australia. Other names: Terra Australia nondum cognita, the southern land not yet known. Other names for the hypothetical continent have included Brazil Australis, Magellanica, land of Magellan, the southern land of the Holy Spirit, the great island of Java. It was introduced, the notion of Terra Australis was introduced by Aristotle, who simply declared that there must be a region bearing the same relation to the southern pole as the place we live in bears to our pole. The decline of the idea. Over the centuries, the idea of Terra Australis gradually lost its hold. and much later James Cook sailed around most of New Zealand in 1770, showing that even it could not be part of a large continent. On his second voyage, he circumnavigated the globe at a very high southern latitude, at some places even crossing the South Polar Circle, showing that any possible southern continent must lie well within the cold polar areas. There could be no extension into regions with a temperate climate, as had been thought before. In 1814, Matthew Flinders published the book Voyage to Terra Australis. Flinders had concluded that the Terra Australis as hypothesized by Aristotle and Ptolemy did not exist, so he wanted the name applied to what he saw as the next best thing, Australia.
You must battle to ensure our survival. Dragons of Atlantis. Survive extinction.
This is all ancient thought, full of this legendary idea of a mysterious, primeval, holy, paradisaic earth center, a spot connected as is no other with the center of heaven, the paradise of God. Why it should be so, no one has ever told us, but the hypothesis which places the biblical Eden at the pole and makes all later Earth navals commemorative of that primal one, affords a perfect explanation. In the light of it, there is no difficulty in understanding that Earth center in Jerusalem, with which we began. The inconspicuous pillar in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre symbolizes and commemorates far more than the geographical ignorance of medieval ages. It stands for the Japanese pillar, by which the first soul born upon earth mounted to the sky. It stands for the world column of the East Aryans and the Chinvat Bridge of Iran. It stands for the law-proclaiming pillar of Origalchum in Atlantis, placed in the center of the most central land. It stands for the Talmudic pillar, by means of which the tenants of the terrestrial paradise mount to the celestial, and, having spent the Shabbat, return to pass the week below. It symbolizes Cradle, Atlas, Meru, Harabere Zaiti, Karzakura, every fabulous mountain on whose top the sky pivots itself and around which all the heavenly bodies ceaselessly revolve. It perpetuates a religious symbolism which existed in its region before ever Jerusalem had been made the Hebrew capital, recalling to our modern world the Tabor Haaretz of a period anterior to the days of Samuel. In tradition, it is said to mark the precise spot whence the clay was taken, out of which the body of Adam was modelled. It does so, but it does it in a language and a method which were common to all the most ancient nations of the earth. It points not to the soil in which it stands, but to the holier soil of a faraway, primitive Eden. Psalm 132, verse 13. For the Lord has chosen Zion. He has desired it for his dwelling, saying, and there it is, he has desired it for his habitation. Exodus, you will bring them in and plant them on the mountain of your inheritance, the place, Lord, you made for your dwelling, the sanctuary, Lord, your hands established. Psalm 48. A psalm, great is the Lord, and most worthy of praise in the city of our God, his holy mountain. Psalm 48. Beautiful in his loftiness, the joy of the whole earth. Like the heights of Saphon is Mount Zion, the city of the great King. Psalm 68. Why gaze in envy, you rugged mountain, at the mountain where God chooses to reign, where the Lord himself will dwell forever? Psalm 76. His tent is in Salem, his dwelling place in Zion. Psalm 78. But he chose the tribe of Judah, Mount Sion, which he loved. Psalm 83. Who said, let us take possession of the pasture lands of God. Jeremiah 17. Then kings who sit on David's throne will come through the gates of this city with their officials. They and their officials will come riding in chariots and on horses, accompanied by the men of Judah and those living in Jerusalem, and this city will be inhabited forever. Psalm 132, verse 7. Let us go to his dwelling place, let us worship at his footstool. In the Bible, it says that the world, this earth, is God's footstool. Closer references. Chronicles 28. King David rose to his feet and said, listen to me, my fellow Israelites, my people. I had it in my heart to build a house as a place of rest for the ark of the covenant of the Lord, for the footstool of our God, and I made plans to build it. Psalm 5. But I, by your great love, can come into your house. In reverence, I bow down towards your holy temple. Send me your light and your faithful care, Psalm 43. Let them lead me. Let them bring me to your holy mountain, the place where you dwell. Psalm 99. Exalt the Lord our God and worship at his footstool. He is holy. Isaiah 60. The glory of Lebanon will come to you, the juniper, the fir, and the cypress together, to adorn my sanctuary, and I will glory the place for my feet. Lamentations 2. How the Lord has covered daughter Sion with the clouds of his anger. He has hurled down the splendor of Israel from heaven to earth. He has not remembered his footstool in the days of his anger. She is simply a copy a miniature likeness of the true Mount and City of God in the sights of the north, which should symbolize and commemorate the peculiarities of Eden, that he uses the fact as an unanswerable argument against those imaginative critics who would place the composition of the second chapter of Genesis subsequent to the Babylonian exile. He says, another proof, and a very decisive one in my opinion, of the high antiquity of the narrative of Genesis concerning Eden, and of the knowledge of it possessed by the Hebrews long before the captivity, is the intention so clearly proved by Ewald to imitate the 4 rivers which predominated in the works of Solomon and Hezekiah for distribution of the waters of Jerusalem, which in its turn was considered as the umbilicus of the earth, it's the navel, in the double sense of center of the inhabited regions and source of the rivers. The 4 streams which watered the town and the foot of its ramparts, one of which was named Gihon, like one of the paradisaic rivers, were, as Ewald has shown, reputed to issue through subterranean subterranean communications for the spring of fresh water situated beneath the temple, the sacred source of life and purity to which the prophets attach a high symbolic value. Okay, time to stop here. I think I'm going to work out some things from this movie in detail. Well, thank you all for watching.